I worked night shift managing the medical supply storage in the basement of St. Michael's Hospital, a small facility on the edge of town. The hospital had cut costs everywhere, so our security cameras were ancient, live feed only, no recording capability. My supervisor said if something happens, you catch it live or not at all. The basement was cold, fluorescent lights flickering occasionally, rows of metal shelves stacked with boxes of syringes, gauze, medications, and old equipment nobody used anymore. After midnight, the building went silent except for occasional footsteps from nurses upstairs. I'd drink coffee, check inventory spreadsheets, and glance at the four grainy monitors every few minutes, watching empty hallways and the loading dock entrance. It was around 2:45 in the morning when I first saw it. I was yawning, finishing the last sip of coffee from my mug when I glanced up at monitor 3. That camera covered the auxiliary hallway leading to the old storage wing we didn't use anymore. At the far end of the corridor, maybe 40 feet from the camera, someone was standing there. They wore a long white medical coat and a surgical cap, but what caught my attention was the mask. It wasn't a regular surgical mask. It was one of those plague doctor masks, the kind with the long bird beak nose, round glass eyepieces, and brown weathered leather. The person stood completely still, facing directly toward the camera. I blinked hard, thinking exhaustion was playing tricks on me. When I looked again, they were still there, motionless. I checked the clock. 2:47. That hallway hadn't been used since 10 at night. A chill ran down my spine and my heart picked up speed. Maybe it was a doctor or custodian who got lost, but that mask, it wasn't modern medical equipment. Their hands hung at their sides and the grainy monitor made the image blur slightly, but the figure was unmistakable. I reached for my radio to call Sarah, the night shift nurse upstairs, but hesitated. What if it was just staff? Then the figure started moving. Slow, deliberate steps toward the camera, each footfall measured, unhurried. My unease grew with every second. The person on the screen got closer, now about 20 feet from the camera. They stopped, tilted their head to one side like they were studying something. I stood up, grabbed my keys and backup flashlight. Stepping out of my small office inside the storage area, I entered the main basement corridor. The fluorescent lights above buzzed and flickered. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor as I passed rows of medical equipment shelves, shadows filling the gaps between them. I reached the junction where the auxiliary hallway branched off to the right. I stopped and listened. Complete silence. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing. I turned right into the auxiliary corridor and swept my flashlight beam down its length. The hallway stretched about 60 feet with locked storage room doors on both sides. The camera was mounted on the ceiling at the far end, its red LED blinking. I walked forward, shining the light left and right. Nobody. The hallway was completely empty. I tested each door handle along the way, all locked tight. There was nowhere to hide, no side passages. This corridor was a dead end with only one way in or out. I stood directly under the camera, looking up at its blinking red light. A knot formed in my stomach. How could they disappear in 30 seconds? I hurried back to my office, heart pounding. Maybe they turned around and left while I was away from the monitors. I sat down and looked at monitor 3. The hallway remained empty. I exhaled slowly, took a drink of water, and tried to calm down. Then, about 2 minutes later, the figure reappeared. This time they stood at the corridor entrance, near the junction where I'd just been. I jerked back, knocking my water cup onto the desk. How did they get back there? I was just in that spot. The masked figure stood motionless, the bird beak aimed at the camera. Then slowly, they raised one hand, holding something small and white. They placed the object on the floor, then stepped backward into the shadows beside the entrance and vanished from view. I jumped up and ran. No hesitation this time. I sprinted straight to the auxiliary hallway, flashlight beam bouncing ahead of me. My pulse hammered in my ears. When I reached the spot I'd seen on camera, I found something on the floor, a roll of medical gauze. I crouched down and picked it up carefully by the edges. The gauze was white, but it had a dried brownish-red stain in the middle that looked like old blood. Inside the roll was a small folded piece of paper. I unfolded it with shaking fingers. Written in black pen was, Ward D, Bed 7. Ward D was the old section of the hospital, closed down 10 years ago and now used for storage. Bed 7 meant nothing to me. I looked around. Still nobody. Clutching the gauze and note, I ran back to my office and grabbed the radio. "Sarah, have you seen anyone unusual in the basement?" Her voice crackled back. "No, why, what's wrong?" I explained quickly, my voice trembling. She said she'd come down right away. While waiting, I stared at the monitors. The figure didn't reappear. Sarah arrived within minutes, slightly out of breath. She looked at the gauze roll and the note, her expression growing serious. "Ward D, Bed 7. I've heard about that area. She told me that years ago there'd been an incident, a patient who died under strange circumstances. The details were unclear, just rumors passed between older nurses." "Should we call security upstairs?" I asked. She nodded and used the internal phone to call. Two security guards came down, Johnson, a man in his 60s, and Rodriguez, around 30. I showed them the monitors, the gauze, and the note. Johnson frowned. "A plague doctor mask. Who wears that in a hospital?" Rodriguez suggested checking the door access system to see who might have entered the basement. We conducted a full sweep of the basement level. Every storage room door was locked. The emergency exit was secured from inside, its alarm still armed, meaning nobody had opened it. The elevator log showed no trips to the basement since 10 at night. The stairwell door required a key card, and the access history showed no unusual swipes. Rodriguez shook his head. Nobody could get down here without a card or someone opening the door. Johnson looked at the monitor. Could the camera be glitching, showing old footage? "But the gauze and note are real," I said, holding them up. Sarah suggested calling the police. Johnson made the call and reported the situation. The police promised to send officers. While we waited, the group sat in my office, watching the screens. The clock read 3:30. Nobody spoke. The tension was thick. We were waiting for the police when monitor 2, the stairwell camera, flickered. The figure appeared on the stairs between the basement and first floor. They faced upward, as if looking at someone on the upper level. Sarah gasped. "That's near where I work." "Johnson, go check," I said. Johnson and Rodriguez rushed out toward the stairwell. On the monitor, the figure stood perfectly still. 10 seconds passed, then Johnson appeared on screen, running down the steps. He reached the exact spot where we'd seen the figure. Nobody there. Johnson looked back at the camera and raised his hands in a gesture that meant nothing was there. Rodriguez went up to the first floor and checked the hallway. Empty. The figure had vanished again. Johnson returned to the office, breathing heavily. I ran immediately. There was nobody. Sarah's voice shook. "This isn't normal." Suddenly, monitor 1, which covered the area just outside my office door, showed the figure standing right there. 6 feet away, separated only by the glass door. All 4 of us spun around to look at the actual door. Nobody. We looked back at the screen. The figure remained visible on the monitor, standing in the same spot. Rodriguez opened the door and looked out. The corridor was empty, yet the monitor still displayed the figure standing there. My hands trembled. What is the camera showing? There's nobody actually there. Johnson said, "Maybe the system's been hacked. Someone's feeding fake video." But our cameras weren't connected to the internet, only internal wiring. Sarah started crying. "I'm scared. We need to go upstairs." I nodded. "Let's go to the main lobby and wait for the police there." We left the office and walked quickly toward the elevator. I carried the radio and flashlight. The basement darkness felt heavier now, more threatening. We reached the elevator and I pressed the up button. The LED display showed the elevator descending, floor 3, floor 2, floor 1. The doors opened. Inside on the floor lay a patient identification card. Rodriguez picked it up. It was an old card, yellowed paper, handwritten. The name on it was my name. Admission date was from 10 years ago. Ward D, bed 7. Diagnosis field was blank. I grabbed the card from him. That's my name, but I've never been admitted here. Sarah stared at the card, her face pale. 10 years ago, that's when Ward D closed. Johnson said, someone's messing with you. They know your name. My hands shook. What do they want? Suddenly, all the basement lights went out. Complete darkness. Sarah screamed. My flashlight beam swept wildly. Johnson yelled, get in the elevator now. All four of us rushed inside. Rodriguez hammered the door close button repeatedly. The doors began sliding shut slowly. In the final moment before they closed, my flashlight beam caught the figure standing at the far end of the corridor, about 30 feet away. Not moving, just watching. The elevator doors sealed shut. The elevator rose and we all breathed hard. I held the patient card, my hand trembling uncontrollably. Sarah said, we have to find out what Ward D, bed 7 really is. The elevator stopped at the first floor. The doors opened to the quiet, well-lit main lobby. The receptionist on duty looked surprised as our group rushed out. Johnson explained there was a situation in the basement and police were on their way. 5 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived and listened to our story. They went down to the basement with Johnson and Rodriguez. Sarah and I sat in the lobby waiting. Sarah went to the hospital computer and searched old records. She found the Ward D file, an isolation unit for severe infection cases, shut down after a small outbreak in 2015. There were no specific records for bed 7, but a note read, patient records sealed by administration. The police came back up and reported they found nobody. The basement was secure and the lights had been turned back on. No signs of forced entry were found. The next morning, hospital administration held an emergency meeting. The director ordered a full inspection of the camera system. A technician discovered that camera 3 had a faulty processing chip. The chip was creating ghost images from old data stuck in its cache memory. Even though the system didn't record, the camera chip temporarily stored short segments, and when it malfunctioned, it replayed those fragments. But the gauze and patient card were real, not hallucinations. Police investigated further and discovered that a former medical technician named Marcus had been fired 6 months earlier. Marcus used to work in the basement and knew the night shift schedule well. He'd kept an old access card that hadn't been deactivated and entered through a secondary emergency exit that had no camera coverage. Marcus wore old medical clothing and the mask, which he'd found in an antique medical equipment closet, and deliberately appeared and disappeared to create fear. His motive was revenge for being fired. He wanted to cause disruption. Marcus was arrested at his home and confessed to everything. He'd printed the fake patient card with my name, taken from personnel records, and left the gauze from old supplies. About Ward D, bed 7, it had no special meaning. Just random numbers to create confusion. The hospital upgraded its security system. All old access cards were collected and deactivated. New cameras with recording capability were installed. Additional security guards were assigned to basement night shifts. I was given a week off. When I returned to work, I felt safer with the new cameras, brighter lighting, and colleagues always present. Sarah came down occasionally with coffee to chat. I still remembered that night, but I understood it was a real person, nothing supernatural. I learned an important lesson about staying alert and the importance of updated security systems. Eventually, I felt at peace, knowing I'd overcome my fear. The hospital returned to normal operations. Marcus was convicted of illegal trespass and harassment and received his sentence. I continued my job, now with trusted teammates and a much safer system in place. I was the only person working the night shift at a small warehouse in an industrial park outside the city on a Wednesday night in early November. The job was simple. I'm a security guard, not some tough guy or anything, just a regular dude in his 30s trying to pay the bills. Most nights were boring. sitting in a dimly lit control room watching grainy feeds from 12 cameras scattered around the building. The room was small with a metal desk that felt cold even through my sleeves, and an old swivel chair that squeaked every time I moved. 12 monitors were stacked in 3 rows in front of me, showing empty hallways, rows of shelving, and the parking lot outside. I had a clear plastic water bottle sitting next to my keyboard, and a handwritten shift log paper that said my hours were 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The time on the bottom monitor showed 2:15 in the morning. I was reviewing the camera logs from 10 p.m., writing notes in the book like I was supposed to. The only sounds were the ventilation fan from the old AC system and the hum of the monitors. Light from the parking lot street lamp came through the small window behind me. I thought about making coffee from the machine in the corner. I had 4 more hours until my shift ended. Just another quiet night like all the others. My phone buzzed on the desk, the screen lighting up. A text from a number I didn't have saved. "You should check camera 7. I looked up at monitor 7. It showed the walkway through warehouse B, nothing unusual, just shelving units and fluorescent lights. I figured maybe it was someone from the morning shift texting the wrong person, but they didn't start until 6 a.m. I typed back, "Who is this?" No response. 3 minutes passed. Then another text came through. Plastic water bottle. Shift log paper, metal desk. My heart started beating faster. I looked around the control room. The water bottle, the shift log, the metal desk. Everything the message described was right here. I stood up and walked to the small window that looked out at the parking lot. Only my pickup truck sat under the streetlight. No other vehicles. I went back to the desk and checked all 12 monitors carefully. Cameras 1 through 6 showed the front entrance, the office area, warehouse A all empty. Cameras 7 through 12 showed warehouse B, warehouse C where we kept electronics, the back exit, and the parking lot. Everything looked quiet. I tried calling the number back. No signal, like the number didn't exist. An uncomfortable feeling started crawling up my spine, like someone was watching me. Maybe this was a prank from friends, but nobody knew I was working tonight except my boss, Mike. I decided to keep working, but I kept my phone closer. 10 minutes went by in silence. I tried focusing on the monitors. Suddenly monitor 8, the one showing warehouse C where we stored laptops and tablets, started flickering. Snow and static filled the screen. I tapped the control panel, adjusting the signal. The picture came back for a few seconds, then went out again. Then camera 4, showing the office area, did the same thing. The system was old, but I'd never seen multiple cameras glitch like this at the same time. A third text appeared on my phone. "Having trouble with the cameras." My blood went cold. This person knew exactly what was happening in my room in real time. I typed back angrily, "Stop this, I'm calling the police." Immediately, monitor 11 showing the back exit went completely black. Then camera 3, camera 9. One by one, 7 out of 12 cameras lost signal within 2 minutes. Only 5 cameras still worked. Camera 1 at the main entrance, camera 5 in the middle hallway, camera 7 in warehouse B, camera 10 showing the parking lot, and camera 12. Camera 12 was inside my control room, mounted in the corner of the ceiling, pointed down at my desk. I looked up at it. The red light was still on. It was recording. That meant whoever this was could be watching me through my own camera right now. I stood up, grabbed my flashlight from the desk drawer. I had to check the electrical panel and camera system in the back of the warehouse, but just as I reached for my keys hanging on the hook, my phone buzzed. "Don't go out there yet." I froze in place. I stood in the control room, gripping the flashlight, my heart pounding hard. I couldn't just sit here waiting. I needed to know what was happening. Ignoring the warning text, I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The corridor was narrow with pale fluorescent lights overhead and gray paint peeling in spots. My footsteps echoed, rubber soles scraping against the concrete floor. Camera 5 was still working, pointed down this hallway. I looked up at its red light. I walked past warehouse A. The door was closed and locked like it should be. I continued toward warehouse B. Warehouse B stored clothing, shoes, household items. Nothing too valuable. The door was cracked open slightly. I clearly remembered locking it at 11 p.m. during my patrol. I stopped and listened. No sounds came from inside. I pushed the door gently. It creaked as it swung wider. I clicked on my flashlight and shined it inside. Long rows of metal shelving stretched into the dim space, cardboard boxes stacked high, the smell of dust and paper. I stepped in a few feet, sweeping the light left and right. Suddenly I heard a noise from the far end of the warehouse, like something brushing against metal shelving. "Hello, someone there," I called out. My voice didn't sound as steady as I wanted. No answer came back. I walked slowly toward the sound, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. I made it halfway down the aisle when my light caught something at the end. A figure stood perfectly still between two shelving units about 20 feet away. A man wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up, a black face mask covering his nose and mouth. His hands hung at his sides, empty from what I could see. He just stood there, staring at me. "This is private property. You need to leave now," I said, trying to keep my voice firm. He didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there watching me. Several seconds passed that felt like minutes. Then slowly he took one step backward. Then he turned and disappeared into the shadows behind the shelving. I shined my light after him but saw only boxes. I ran to the end of the aisle. The emergency exit door stood wide open, cold air blowing in from outside. This door had an alarm, but no bells were ringing. Someone had disabled it. I bolted out of Warehouse B and ran back down the hallway toward the control room. My footsteps echoed loud, my breathing came fast. I thought about running straight to the main entrance, out to the parking lot to my truck. But my truck keys were in the control room in the desk drawer. I had to go back for them. I ran past Warehouse when I heard footsteps behind me. Not my footsteps. Someone else running. I didn't look back. I ran faster. I saw the employee break room on my left, an old wooden door with a lock on the inside. I threw myself through the doorway, slammed the door shut, and twisted the lock. My back pressed against the door while I tried to catch my breath. The break room was small. A round table, 3 plastic chairs, a mini fridge, an old coffee maker, and safety posters taped to the walls. A small window with bars looked out at the dumpster area in back. No way to climb out. There was no landline phone in here. I pulled out my cell phone. No signal, just no service on the screen. The thick concrete walls in this section always blocked reception. I tried calling 911 multiple times, nothing connected. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside, slow and deliberate. They came closer to the break room and stopped right outside the door. I held my breath and backed away from the door. The doorknob turned from the outside. The lock held. 3 soft knocks came on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Then silence. I waited, every second stretched out. Maybe 10 minutes passed, maybe 20, I couldn't tell. No more sounds came from outside. I thought if I stayed here until 6 a.m. when the morning shift arrived, I'd be safe. But that was 3.5 hours away. And I had no idea what this person was doing in the warehouse. My boss would be furious if I let merchandise get stolen. This was my responsibility. I had to get back to the control room and call the police from the landline there. After about 25 minutes in the break room, I decided I had to move. I unlocked the door very slowly, trying not to make noise. I cracked it open just an inch and looked into the hallway. Empty. The fluorescent lights still hummed overhead. I stepped out, keeping my back against the wall, moving one step at a time toward the control room. I held the flashlight in my hand, ready to use it as a weapon if I needed to. The hallway stretched 60 feet from the break room to the control room. Each footstep I took carefully, listening for any sound. I passed Warehouse A, still closed. I got close to the control room. The door was cracked open. I was sure I'd closed it when I ran out. I stopped and watched. No movement inside that I could see. I pushed the door wider with my flashlight, not stepping in yet. The room appeared empty. All 12 monitors were still there, but 7 still showed static. Camera 12, the one inside this room, was now turned to face the wall. Someone had moved it. I stepped in quickly, went to the desk, opened the drawer, and grabbed my truck keys. I reached for the landline phone on the desk to call 911. I lifted it to my ear. No dial tone. The cord had been cut. I looked down. The phone line was severed cleanly near the connection point. A new text appeared on my cell phone. Warehouse C now. Camera 8, showing Warehouse C, suddenly came back to life. The image was clear. I looked at the screen. Movement at the far end of Warehouse C, a shadow moving between shelving units. Warehouse C held our laptops, tablets, phones, the most valuable inventory. He was stealing merchandise. I knew I should run outside right now, get in my truck and leave. But part of me thought I had to try to stop this. This was my job, my responsibility. I gripped the flashlight tighter and walked out of the room, heading toward Warehouse C at the end of the right hallway. The door to Warehouse C had a keypad lock. I punched in the code, 2847. The door clicked open. I stepped into Warehouse C. It was bigger than Warehouse B, with taller shelves and brighter LED lights. 3 cardboard boxes sat open on the floor, laptops missing from inside. I heard movement from the 4th row of shelving on the left. I walked slowly in that direction, my heart hammering. I turned into the aisle. Nobody there. But right then I heard fast footsteps from behind me. I spun around just in time to see a dark shape. Intense pain exploded at the back of my head. Light flashed bright, then blurred. My knees went weak and I tilted forward. I reached out trying to grab the shelf but couldn't hold on. I fell onto the cold concrete floor. My eyes saw someone's feet, black sneakers. Then everything went dark. I woke up to harsh light in my eyes. My head throbbed like someone was hammering nails into my skull. Voices filtered in from far away, then got clearer. He's waking up. I opened my eyes and saw the high ceiling of Warehouse C, white LED lights above. A face looked down at me, a paramedic in a blue uniform. Next to him stood my boss, Mike, his face serious. 2 police officers, 1 man and 1 woman, stood nearby with notepads. The paramedic asked me my name, what day it was. I answered correctly. They helped me sit up, my back against a shelving unit. A cold pack was placed against the back of my head. The female officer asked what I remembered. I told them about the strange texts, the cameras going out, seeing the man in Warehouse B, hiding in the break room, coming back and getting attacked in Warehouse C. The officer wrote quickly in her notepad. Mike told me the morning shift, 2 workers, arrived at 5:50 a.m. They saw Warehouse C door open, came inside and found me unconscious on the floor. They called 911 immediately. It was now 6:20 in the morning. I'd been out for about an hour and a half. The male officer said they'd checked the warehouse. 47 laptops, 23 tablets, and 15 smartphones were missing from Warehouse C. Total estimated value over $80,000. The backup master key set kept in a locked cabinet in the control room was also gone. Those keys opened all the warehouse doors and emergency exits. They asked to see my phone. I handed it over and they put it in a clear evidence bag. We stood up, with help from the paramedic, and walked through the building. In Warehouse B, the back emergency exit still stood open. The alarm system had been cut, clearly from outside. In the control room, the landline cord was severed, camera 12 had been turned, and the locked key cabinet was pried open, the lock broken. In the hallway, camera 5 had black spray paint covering the lens. That's why it only showed static on the monitor. In Warehouse C, camera 8 wasn't damaged. Maybe the thief deliberately left it working to lure me there. The paramedic checked my head again and said I needed to go to the hospital for a CT scan to check for concussion. The police said they'd pull footage from the working cameras and check for fingerprints. They told me this looked carefully planned. The person knew my work schedule, knew I worked alone, knew the warehouse layout, knew how to disable cameras and alarms. Possibly a former employee or someone with inside information. They asked who knew I was working tonight. I said Mike, my boss, and 3 coworkers from other shifts. But I didn't remember telling anyone else. The officers said they'd contact me after investigating. Mike told me to go home and rest, not to worry about work for a few days. An ambulance took me to the hospital. The CT scan showed a mild concussion. I had to stay for observation for 6 hours. I lay in the hospital bed staring at the white ceiling, thinking about the night. The feeling that someone had watched me, planned everything, knew exactly where I'd be and what I'd do. My phone, returned by police after they copied the data, had a text from Mike. The company would cover my medical bills and I'd get paid leave for 1 week. I went home at 3 p.m. to my small 1-bedroom apartment where I lived alone. I couldn't sleep even though I was exhausted. I kept seeing that figure standing in Warehouse B. 2 days later, the police called. They said the camera footage didn't capture a clear face. The thief wore the hood and mask the entire time. The phone number that sent the texts was a fake number, untraceable. They found no useful fingerprints. He wore gloves. The stolen merchandise hadn't shown up at local pawn shops or in the underground market yet. They were investigating former employees and contractors who'd worked at the warehouse but had no solid leads yet. 1 week later, I returned to work. The company had installed new cameras, changed all the locks, and hired a second guard for night shifts. I didn't work alone anymore. My new partner was named Marcus, a guy in his 40s, former military, tall and quiet. I felt safer with someone there. But every time a monitor flickered from a normal technical glitch, my heart still raced. Every time I heard an odd sound during patrols, I still jumped. I never sat with my back to the door anymore. I kept my phone in my pocket at all times with 911 saved as a speed dial. 3 months passed and the case went cold. Police never found the suspect. The file moved to unsolved cases. Mike said the company got an insurance payout and kept operating. But for me, the feeling that someone once stood watching me through cameras, knew my every move, and attacked me when I was vulnerable, that feeling never completely went away. Now when I work nights, I always remind Marcus to check all doors twice, never patrol alone, and always trust your gut. If something feels wrong, call the police right away. Don't try to handle it yourself. The lesson I learned that night was this: sometimes running isn't cowardice, it's survival. Sunday night at Highland Medical Center, 3rd floor. I volunteered for the records shift because rent was due and overtime paid double. The ward receptionist left at 7. I checked patients in through the glass window. My supervisor texted me at 8:15 asking if I needed anything. I replied no and sent a photo of my desk with the time stamp. She responded with a coffee emoji. The fluorescent lights buzzed above my head. I had 5 charts to file and 3 insurance forms to scan before midnight. The hallways smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. Around 8:40, I walked to the break room for water. The medication room door at the end of the hall stood open 6 inches. Protocol required it locked at all times. I pushed it shut and heard the magnetic lock engage. I tested the handle twice. Secure. I filled my bottle and returned to my desk. 10 minutes later, I glanced down the corridor. The medication room door was open again. Same angle, same 6 inches. My stomach tightened. I walked back and checked the frame. No damage. The lock clicked when I closed it. I stood there counting to 30. It stayed shut. I took a photo of the closed door and sent it to my supervisor with the message, "Med room door keeps opening." She replied, "Did you report it to facilities?" I texted back, "Reporting now." I called the facilities line. No answer. I left a voicemail with my name, location, and the issue. I returned to my desk but kept watching that door through the glass partition. Something felt wrong, but I could not explain what. At 9:20, the nurse call bell rang from room 312. The board showed no patients assigned to that room. I checked the computer. Room 312 was listed as empty and scheduled for deep cleaning Monday morning. The bell rang again, longer this time. I tried pulling up the camera feed for that hall. The screen showed connection error. I walked toward room 312, my badge swinging on my lanyard. The door was closed. I pressed my ear against it and heard nothing. The bell had stopped. I tried my badge on the reader. Red light. My clearance did not include patient rooms after hours. I knocked twice and announced myself. Medical records, is anyone in there? No response. I returned to the desk and called security. The guard on duty said he was doing rounds in the parking garage and would come up when he finished. I asked how long. 15 minutes, maybe 20, he said. I told him about the medication room door and the call bell. He sounded unconcerned. Building's old, things glitch all the time. At 9:35, I heard footsteps in the east hallway, soft shoes on linoleum. They moved toward the elevator, then stopped. I stood and looked through the partition. No one was there. The elevator never dinged. I sat back down and tried to focus on the insurance forms, but my hands were shaking. At 9:50, a woman appeared at my window. Mid-40s, gray hoodie, hospital visitor badge clipped upside down. She tapped on the glass. "What time do visiting hours end?" "They ended at 8, I said. She nodded slowly. "Can I use the restroom?" I pointed to the public one near the elevator. She thanked me and walked that direction, but her reflection in the glass showed her turn toward the staff hallway instead. I stood and called out, "Excuse me, that area is restricted." She did not respond. I stepped into the hall and saw her trying doors, staff lounge, storage closet. She moved methodically, testing each handle without looking back. I raised my voice. "Ma'am, you need to stop. That area is staff only." She stopped at the door to the file archives and turned. Her visitor badge had no photo, no name, just a barcode. She smiled. "I'm looking for my mother." "All patients are on the second and fourth floors," I said. "This floor is administrative only." She tilted her head. "What are you filing?" I did not answer. I walked toward her and told her I would escort her to the elevator. She asked, "Are you here alone?" My throat went dry. I nodded toward the security camera above us. "We have full coverage." She looked up at it, then back at me. "That one's off." She was right. The red recording light was dark. She walked past me toward the medication room. I followed and positioned myself between her and my desk. She tried the medication room handle. It opened. She stepped inside and I heard bottles shift. "You need to leave immediately," I shouted. She came out holding a small bottle of saline solution. "I just need to rinse my contact." Her eyes were clear and dry. No redness, no irritation. I moved back to my desk and locked the records office door from the inside. I called security again. This time I said there was an unauthorized person trying to access restricted areas. The guard said he was 2 minutes away. The woman stood in the hallway watching me through the glass. She was not moving, just standing there with the saline bottle in her hand. I texted my supervisor. "Woman on floor will not leave, security coming." She replied immediately. "Lock yourself in. Call police if she does not leave when security arrives." I called the local police non-emergency line and explained the situation. The dispatcher said an officer would stop by after handling a traffic accident nearby. The woman walked to the staff break room at the end of the hall. She disappeared inside. I heard the refrigerator open, then cabinets. She was searching for something. I stood and moved to the interior file room where I could lock a second door behind me. No windows. I turned off the overhead light and used my phone flashlight. I sent another text to my supervisor. "She is in the break room going through things." Minutes passed. I heard the elevator ding. Security had arrived. I heard the guard speaking in a calm tone. I could not make out words. Then I heard the woman respond. Her voice was higher now, apologetic. "I got lost looking for my mother's room." The guard told her visiting hours were over and walked her to the elevator. I heard the doors close. I waited. The guard knocked on the records office door. I unlocked it and stepped out. He was in his 50s, gray uniform, radio on his belt. "She left without issue," he said. "Anything missing?" I told him about the medication room. He walked down and checked it. Saline bottles on the counter, nothing else disturbed. He logged the incident and said he would add extra checks to this floor for the rest of the night. I thanked him and returned to my desk. I tried to focus on the charts but kept glancing at the hallway. At 10:30, I heard a door close somewhere on the floor. Not the elevator, not the stairwell, a patient room door. I stood and looked down the hall. Every door was closed. I walked to room 312. I pressed my ear against it. I heard breathing. Steady, deliberate breathing. I stepped back from room 312 and called security again. The guard answered annoyed. I just escorted her out. I watched her leave through the lobby camera. I hear someone breathing in an empty patient room, I said. He sighed. I'll check the floor again, but it'll take me a few minutes. Got a smoking violation outside. I returned to the records office and locked both doors. Interior file room and main office. I pushed my chair against the interior door handle and sat on the floor with my back to the wall. I could hear everything from here. At 10:45, I heard the stairwell door open. The fire door that required a badge after hours. Heavy steps moved down the corridor. Not soft shoes this time. Boots. The steps stopped at my office. I held my breath. Someone tried the handle, once, twice. Then silence. I texted my supervisor, someone trying my door, security is outside, I am locked in file room. She responded, calling you now. My phone vibrated. I answered and whispered. Stay where you are and keep the line open, she said. I'm calling the police directly and giving them your exact location. I heard file cabinet drawers opening in the main office. Whoever was out there had gotten inside. My badge was the only one with access. I looked at my lanyard. My badge was gone. I checked my pockets, the floor around me. Nothing. The woman had taken it when she walked past me in the hallway. The file cabinet slammed shut. Footsteps moved toward the interior file room door. The handle turned slowly. I pressed my feet against the base of a metal shelving unit and braced. The door pushed against the chair. An inch, then two. A hand reached through the gap. Female hand, no rings, chipped red nail polish. She pushed harder. The chair scraped across the tile. I grabbed the 3-hole punch from the shelf above me. It was metal and heavy. The chair gave way and the door swung open. The woman stood in the doorway, no hoodie now. Just a black long-sleeve shirt and the same visitor badge. Her hair was pulled back tight. She looked at me and said, I need a file. Her voice was flat, matter of fact. I asked whose file. She did not answer. She stepped inside and scanned the labels on the shelves. I stood and held the hole punch at my side. Whose file do you need? She pulled a folder from the middle shelf and opened it. She took photos of each page with her phone. I told her that was protected health information and illegal to photograph. She ignored me and kept snapping pictures. I moved toward the door to leave, but she shifted and blocked me. She finished photographing and slid the file back into place. Then she looked at me. You should have left at 8. What do you mean? I asked. The receptionist always leaves at 7. You were supposed to follow at 8. Someone had been watching my schedule. My supervisor's voice came through my phone speaker. Are you okay? Talk to me. The woman glanced at the phone in my hand. I raised it. The police are on the way. I'll be gone before they arrive. She moved toward me. I swung the hole punch. It connected with her shoulder. She stumbled back and I ran past her into the main office. I unlocked the door and sprinted into the hallway. I heard her boots behind me. I ran toward the stairwell and slammed through the door. I took the stairs 2 at a time down to the 2nd floor. I could hear her above me, slower now. I reached the 2nd floor nurse station. 2 nurses were charting. I shouted for help and pointed at the stairwell. One nurse grabbed the phone and called a code gray. Security alert. The other nurse stood in front of me. The stairwell door opened and the woman stepped out. She saw the nurses and stopped. She looked at me one more time, turned, and walked back up the stairs. The security guard from earlier came running from the elevator with another officer behind him. The police arrived 12 minutes later. They found my badge in the 3rd floor break room trash can. They reviewed camera footage from the lobby. The woman had entered at 6:45 wearing scrubs under her hoodie and carrying a legitimate visitor pass that belonged to someone else. She knew which cameras were broken. She had studied the layout. They found her fingerprints on 3 patient files in the archive room. All 3 patients had recently died. No family had claimed the bodies yet. She was looking for social security numbers and insurance information. Identity theft targeting the deceased. The hospital administrator called me at 1 in the morning and asked if I needed medical attention. I said no, but I could not stop shaking. My supervisor arrived even though she lived 40 minutes away. She sat with me while I gave my statement to the detectives. She said I should have called the police immediately when the medication room door first opened. I agreed. She said I should have refused to work alone. I agreed with that too. The hospital changed its policy the following week. No solo shifts after 7, always 2 staff members minimum. I think about the visitor badge with no photo. I think about her asking if I was alone. I think about how she knew the cameras were off before I did. Someone had helped her. Someone who worked there or had access to security schedules. The police investigated but never confirmed an accomplice. They never found the woman either. Her prints were not in any database. I requested a transfer to day shift. I was approved immediately. I still work at Highland Medical Center but never passed 5. I tell new hires about that night during orientation. I show them the policy updates that came from it. Check doors every hour. Test your badge at the start of your shift. Know where every camera is located and confirm they are recording. If you see someone without proper identification, do not engage alone. Call security and police at the same time, not one then the other. Trust the feeling that tells you something is wrong, even if you cannot explain why. Do not wait for proof. Do not assume the system will protect you. The protocols exist because of nights like mine. If you are ever alone in a building and something feels off, leave. Leave before you need to. Your safety is worth more than any file, any shift, any paycheck. Walk out.